Hello, welcome once again to Android Developer Office Hours. I'm Joe Mallon, your moderator. Next to me is Trevor Johns.
Hello, everyone.
One of our developer engineers. We also have Alex Lucas in the studio. Daniel Femel is our engineer. And we have a special guest today, Chirag, who is going to be talking about Google Play Services API and what you can use it to do with, or something like that. That was flaky. Okay. Chirag, please.
Hi, my name is Chirag Shah, and I'm a developer programs engineer on Google+. I'm here to talk about the brand new Google+ APIs and Google Play Services, which help you create a more personalized experience for your users with the native +1 button and sign-in button. So let's jump into the +1 button. Generally, the +1 button offers a way for users to recommend content within your application. With the new APIs and Google Play Services, you can integrate a native +1 button in your app. So how do you do this? First, include the +1 button in your layouts. Next, integrate the +client object in the lifecycle of your activity. This means you'll initialize the +client object in your onCreate handler, and then call +client.connect during your onStart handler, and finally call +client.disconnect in your onStop handler. So why do we do this? So during your onStart handler, you'll call +client.connect, which establishes a connection between your application and Google Play Services. And we call disconnect to terminate the connection and just to be a good citizen and have a decent battery life. Finally, initialize the +1 button in your onCreate handler and pass the URL that should be +1 when initializing the +1 button. So now let's jump into the sign-in button. Have you ever tried to enter a username and password on a mobile device? It's pretty difficult. The sign-in with Google+ button authenticates the user and manages the OAuth 2.0 flow and helps simplify the integration with Google+ APIs. Furthermore, users will get a single sign-on experience and won't need to re-enter their Google credentials to use your application. The steps to integrate the sign-in button are very similar to integrating the +1 button. First, you'll include the +sign-in button in your layout. Next, integrate the +client object in the lifecycle of your activity, like we did before. But when initializing the +client object, you'll pass an array of OAuth 2.0 scopes, which basically declare the types of information you're requesting. So let's take a look at what we just talked about. What does the +1 button and sign-in button actually look like on the device? So here, this is the Google+ sample application we have on the Google SDK Manager.
Hey Chirag, this is Engineer Dan. Can you make sure that the connection on the device is all the way plugged in? We're not getting anything out of the screen right now. Power. I think it's the power cord may have come out unplugged out of the MHL connector, so just make sure that.
Yeah, MHL's not plugged in.
There's.
Having a bit of technical difficulties in projecting the phone.
The fun of doing things live.
Right.
Someday we'll learn how to use our equipment properly.
Yes.
Yeah, you can leave that plugged in. There is signal getting down to the box.
Unplug the MHL connector from the phone and plug it back in. Swear to God, I was working just a few minutes ago.
Yes, no,
No luck.
still nothing.
Alright guys, why don't we move on?
All right, yeah, let's move to Plan B.
Okay, so basically, you can emulate what we've done here by going to developers.google.com/plus/mobile/Android. From there, you'll see some instructions instructing you to grab the Google+ SDK within the Google Android SDK Manager, and you'll be able to run the sample application yourself.
Yeah. Let's see if we can pass the phone over here. Let me see if I can demo the sample app live for folks. Let's see. We'll unhook this cable. So, Dan, can you get a camera on me by any chance? Let's hold it up here. For those of you watching, let's see if we can get this focused. All right.
You're good.
Yeah. So, Chirag, do you want to come over and play with the floating phone?
Okay, thank you, Trevor. You can press sign in here. And as you can see here, this is what the Google Plus sign in button looks like. So we'll press the sign in button. And now it's going to ask you to grant access to the sample application. And the permissions are know who you are on Google and send your activity to your private Google Plus history. I'm going to press allow. And now we're signed in. So now let's take a look at the plus one button. Here you can see the native plus one button in various configurations, small, medium, tall, standard, and with inline annotation demonstrating who else plus one did. We can unplus one it here. Finger. Here you can see the plus one dialog, and it says you publicly plus one this, and it shows your name and application you plus one did from. And that's about it. Thank you, Trevor.
Yeah. Hopefully you could make that out, everyone watching could make that out on the camera. I know it's a little bit blurry. Making do with what we can here. All right.
And that's it.
All right. I think that's it for Chirag.
Thank you, Chirag.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. So our next guest is Tim Bray. And what is Tim going to be talking about?
Tim is going to be talking about, I believe, OAuth, correct? Are you there, Tim?
That's right.
Tim? Well,
I'm here.
Ah, there you are.
So you're going to be talking about OAuth, is that correct, Tim?
Well, I'm going to be talking about OAuth in the context of Google Play services. Yeah.
Okay,
That's right.
great. Go ahead, Tim.
Take it away. So Google Play services started rolling out last week, and one of the big goodies that's in there is access to OAuth 2 stuff. Now, the other big goodie was the Google Plus stuff that Chirag just showed you. And in fact, if you look underneath the code that he was running, the OAuth code was also being used to handle the authorization stuff. And we're going to be using it for lots of other stuff. So the problem is that OAuth 2 is a great big, messy, complicated standard. And that's because the whole set of issues around accessing resources online is big and messy and complicated. And OAuth 2 is hard to understand, and you shouldn't have to. So what we're trying to do is make that goodness available with a reasonably sane, tractable API. And the upside's pretty good. The upside is nobody ever has to type a password. Like Chirag said, that sucks. It's really hard to type passwords on mobile devices. But even though they don't have to type a password, they still get good security. They always get prompted by the system, whether they want to give access to something via their email address. And they only get prompted once. And if they change their minds, they can revoke that later. And it really works pretty well. It's a much better user experience. Now, if you're using a Google API like Calendar or YouTube or Google+, there's a nice Java language library that just takes care of all this stuff for you. But if you want to work at a lower level, at the REST level, you're doing HTTP gets and puts, you can also do that directly. I find actually that the Google Plus API works really terrifically well at the REST level, just doing gets to pull JSON out and deal with those. So the way it works is you look at the SDK that came with Google Play Services, and there's a class in there called Google Auth Util, and you work it, and eventually it gives you a thing called a token, which is just a string, a bearer token, which is just a string that you put in an HTTP header, and you do that, then you magically get access to your stuff, any stuff you're entitled to have on Google+. And anybody out there who already knows about OAuth 2 is going to be wondering about token expiration and refreshing and so on, but don't worry, the Google Play Services library just takes care of all that for you. And it's a little bit complicated because it's asynchronous, because when you use OAuth, it's quite possible the phone's going to have to go off and prompt the person to say, hey, is it okay to use your address for this? And then there's going to be lots of network traffic. So you totally can't ever do that on the IO thread. And in fact, if you need to prompt, they'll feed you an intent that you have to launch and act on it in your on-activity result method, and so on and so forth. And there's a little bit of other extra work as well, which is that if you're using OAuth 2, the system, the server side wants to know what app it's talking to. So you have to go and register your app. And there's a thing called the API console that you do that. Just type, Google API console into Google, and it'll take you straight there. So as I said, there's a little bit of extra work, but the upside is really good. Higher security, lower irritation, and just general experience. Finally, I want to say something about futures. That's a story up till now, but we're working on some other goodies. If you think about it, most Android apps these days are hybrid, which is to say they have a mobile app and they also have a web backend where that provides things like persistence and shared user data and so on. And you've got an interesting authentication problem there, which is how does the backend know what app it's talking to and what person it's talking to? And you don't want the person to be typing in passwords just so that your own server knows that it's talking to your own app. So we've got some stuff coming down the road that will get further mileage out of the Google Play Services OAuth stuff. So this is really an interesting time to be working on identity stuff. And I think that with by adopting this stuff and doing a little extra work, you can first of all boost security, and secondly really improve the general user experience that you offer. So that's the OAuth story.
Great. Thank you very much, Tim. Do we have any questions online or coming through and anything in Google Plus on this? Okay. All right. So if there are, we'll leave the lines open. If you've got any questions, either type them in or get into the Hangout.
Either way, I think they'll have to get on the Hangout.
That's true.
Yes.
Yeah. If you have questions, get into the Hangout, ask the question, and we'll get to you as soon as we can. Meanwhile, we're going to move to Google Moderator and take some questions off of there.
Yep, so these were questions submitted before the show and voted on by viewers.
Right.
So the first question is from Palo Alto, California, from a name I can't quite read. But do you want to go ahead and read that, Joe?
Yeah, sure. I'm using loaders from Support Library. However, I found that when the device is rotated, the activity gets recreated and inits the existing loader, but on load finish never gets called. Some say it's a bug in Support Lib. What's the solution or the workaround?
Okay, so I looked into this a little bit before the show, and yeah, so the issue in question here is specific to the Support Library, and yeah, exactly what was described. When on pause is called, on load finished is not getting called for the loader, and this is not the behavior exhibited by the system frameworks. And because of that, that pretty much says, yeah, this is a bug. It's something we need to address in the Support Library. I'll go ahead and make sure that the team that works on that is aware of it, and we'll try and get it fixed in there for you for the next version. Unfortunately, I'm not aware of a workaround off the top of my head for this one, so for now, I think you'll just need to be really careful whenever your app is, is using the Support Library in loaders, and you fall into this particular case. But we'll try and improve it for the next release.
Great. Thank you very much. Next question out of Moderator is from David in Utah. I've implemented standard lock screen media controls via remote control client. The controls don't appear if the screen is locked while media is paused. Is that a feature? Is there a way to get around it?
I believe it is a feature because when your media is not playing, the user probably wants to see, or doesn't want the media controls up. That's sort of the way most of the media services in Android work. Whenever media playback is paused, since there's no quit command anywhere in the system, we just have to assume that your application, treat your application as if it's no longer running, regardless of what's going on under the covers, and that gives the correct user experience. Now, as far as ways to get around it, I can't really think of one, because again, this is actually by design. Again, if you're not actually playing sound, your media player shouldn't be visible to the user. So I think, that's working as intended.
Right, I would say certainly on the lock screen that's true.
Yeah, well, we've added, for the notification bar.
Right.
Yeah, that also used to be actually the way it worked too.
Oh,
in recent builds, we've added, the ability to have extra controls out there, like
right.
a close button, things like that. But that's only in the most recent builds.
Yeah, I agree. The next question is from Jason Robinson in Tennessee. I'm writing a camera app that captures both pictures and video. When I start capturing video with the Galaxy S3, the preview display turns to garbage. It works and looks fine on other devices. There's a link here to a Stack Overflow question.
Okay, so in general, whenever you see something that's not working as intended on one device and it works fine everywhere else, that's what we call a compatibility bug. It's something we definitely take very serious, and for those of you who are longtime watchers of the show, we've mentioned both the CTS and CDD before, but as a recap, the CDD is the compatibility definition document, which defines how everything should work on Android, and the compatibility test suite is the set of automated tests that we run on every new device to verify that it actually meets the requirements set forth in the CDD. If you see a bug like this, that likely means there's a gap in our CTS coverage, so something somehow didn't make it through the, wasn't tested for in the automated tests. The good news is all of that's open source and it's very easy to go and modify and add additional tests. So if you are a developer, and most people watching probably are, we definitely like to encourage you to go and submit new patches and add any missing coverage into the CTS. That being said, maybe you're busy. You are of course welcome to file bugs, and we'll go ahead and add, update the CTS as well. Our issue tracker is at b.android.com. Just let us know as much detail as you can which specific devices you're having issues with, and then our engineers will go ahead and triage that and update our test suite as appropriate.
Great, thank you. Did you happen to look at Stack Overflow?
I did, and it looks really actually bad.
Did anybody respond saying they'd run into the same thing or make any more comments?
No, it's just the question right now. So I can go ahead and hold it up on screen here. This is what the developer is seeing on a normal device, and then this is what they're seeing on that one particular device. So this is something that's definitely very broken on that phone. If I didn't know better, I'd say the phone itself was damaged, but I imagine the camera probably works fine in other apps that's not, falling.
The only thing I can think of is that someone in Stack Overflow land can try and see if they can reproduce the problem to see if it's a phone or a class of phones.
Yeah, my guess is it's probably some odd bug in the camera driver on that device.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll keep monitoring. Please file a bug.
Yes.
And if you've got time to work on the CTS and the CDD, please do that as well. That will be very helpful. Daniel, anything out there in Hangout land yet? No? Okay. We'll move on then. X, the unknown, asks, can you clarify the main differences in use case between Account Manager and Google Play Services?
Okay. Tim or Shirag, I think one of you would probably be the best people to ask this.
Absolutely.
Do either of you want to take this?
Can I speak to that? Hi, this is Tim. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so Account Manager is older. It's been around for a while, and it is, as the name suggests, an account manager, and it manages all sorts of accounts. If I pull up the accounts in my preferences on my own phone, I see accounts from Dropbox, Google, Kobo, Twitter, and so on. So it's sort of a general purpose place for apps to stash accounts and people to use them. It turns out that Account Manager has always had the capability of generating tokens of various sorts, but it was never really very fully worked out and never really became popular. And
Right.
Google Play Services has a new class called Google Asketil I was talking about that's specifically aimed at doing some extra OAuth magic, specifically with Google accounts, because that's what it's called, Google Account Services. So if you want to look up the accounts that are on the phone, ask the user for access to them, that kind of stuff, Account Manager is still what you want to use. If you want to do special magic with OAuth 2 and Google accounts, the new stuff in Google Play Services is what you need.
Okay. Shirag, any additions to that?
And with the plus sign-in button, it wraps around the complexities of picking an account on the phone and granting access from the user. So if you have 3 or 4 accounts on the phone, the Google plus sign-in button will first prompt the user to select an account and then ask them for authorization.
These would be Google accounts, though.
Yes, this
Right.
would be Google accounts, and it would take care of the magic for you.
Okay, great. Thanks. We'll move to the next question from Daniel. I have a strange problem here that puzzles me. After rotating the device, an edit text.getText in onPause returns text that was never assigned to it. When pausing from back key, it doesn't happen. I have no idea what's going on.
All right, Alex, have you had a chance to take a look into this at all?
I looked at the Stack Overflow error, but I wasn't able to see what was going on. In the example that he uses,
By the way, Alex, you might want to actually stand up and hop on camera.
right, actually be on camera.
Oh, what the heck?
I prefer being a disembodied voice, but okay.
And
Stand on the X. Okay. So
Hey, Alex.
there he is.
hello.
How did that happen?
Within
The magic of
this
TV.
specific example, what's happening is the text box has a default value of hello world, and they type ZZZ into the box, so it's hello world ZZZ. Rotate the device, call get text on that edit box, and what they see is just the ZZZ. So just the part that was concatenated to the end of the default value. I'm absolutely puzzled by what would be causing that behavior, actually.
Okay, we'll look into it a bit more, see if we can get an answer and update Stack Overflow for you. So just keep an eye on there. We'll also provide an update during next week's broadcast to let everyone watching who is not following Stack Overflow know what the resolution was. All right,
Great.
let's move on.
Thanks. From ASUs in San Luis Obispo, my app's SQLite DB has more than 1 megabyte of data, it's a protobuf, in a single row's blob column, and cursor crashes when trying to retrieve it. I realize now that cursor has a 1 megabyte limit, but my app has been in use for a while. How do I retrieve the user's data?
Oh boy, that's going to be a bit of a problem. So, yeah, general guidance for working with databases: avoid using the blob storage types. They tend it's not just an Android thing. Over and over again, I've seen developers on all platforms shoot themselves in the foot by trying to store really large things in a database that's not really designed to do so. A better option in pretty much every single instance where you're tempted to use a blob is just to write the blob to a regular file somewhere on disk and store store the file name, store a pointer of the file in the database,
Right.
and then just go and load it as a standard file. Now, getting back to the original question is, how do you recover from this once you've grown beyond 1 megabyte? Unfortunately, so all of the SQLite methods in Android that at least I'm aware of will return a cursor. And I'm also not familiar with any ways to go and just request a range within that blob. So I think if you really want to go and solve this problem, you're going to have to go and grab the source code to SQLite, compile it into your application, and then access it directly without using cursors. Keep in mind, you do have to watch out for the device's own memory limit. You're going to be loading this blob into memory, essentially, and you'll want to go and stream it up to disk as quickly as possible to go and avoid running out of memory. It's going to be ugly. I'm sorry that I don't have a better answer for you. I really wish I did. But I think that's pretty much, or the other option too is, there's the nuclear approach. You can, tell users that they're going to have to wipe their data. In some limited cases, that actually is okay. Very limited. Most apps, I think that actually is a pretty cruddy user experience. Especially most apps would have 1 megabyte files attached to them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think pretty much what you're going to have to do is go in and compile a custom copy of SQLite into your app. Alex, do you want to say something?
Yeah.
I have in the past written some very bad code when I was learning how to use cursors, and it was apparent that SQLite isn't amazing at type safety, which means even if there isn't a way to check to pull ranges of blob data, you might be able to treat it as a string and then pull a substring. This would only be really useful if it was between 1 and 2 megabytes. I would say try to pull the first half of the blob as a substring and then try to pull the second half.
But you still have a string
as a
cursor that's
substring?
larger than a megabyte.
Would you? Oh, if the SQL query itself only returned like the first half of the blob,
There you go.
Right.
I don't know if this would work. This is sort of a last-ditch thing that I would try before giving up completely. Also, I would say, like, Trevor's probably right. You might have to take the nuclear approach, but I would recommend also being sure to build in an option or build in a migration path for users who haven't hit a 1 megabyte row yet, so that their stuff can be migrated safely and they don't have to have anything disappear unnecessarily.
That's a good point. Thanks.
Yeah, another thing you might be able to do too, rather than building in a full copy of SQLite, since you know specifically what you're trying to get at, you might be able to just go and look up the docs on the SQLite website as to how their file format is structured. It is a database; it's going to be a bit complicated, but you might actually just be able to go and read the data out manually without going to all the trouble of porting SQLite. that might be easier, and that's probably what I'd try first.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Anything else? No? All right. Next question is from Yehudi in Colombia. Is it possible to set a proxy to all the system from my app? If can be done without root, even better. On Chrome, you have a very nice API for this, and then he quotes the API link.
Yeah. This question comes up periodically, and as far as I can remember, the answer is actually no. As a application developer, there is no way to go and set a proxy. I believe it can be set. Can it be set via DHCP? Yeah. In any case, as an app developer, that's not available to you regardless. Now, what you can do is create a VPN provider and implement your proxy as a VPN service. Implementing a VPN provider requires a bunch of special permissions, and the user will get a very scary warning, which basically says your app's going to have access to all data, and press no unless you're absolutely positively sure this app's trusted. So writing a VPN provider isn't something to take lightly, but if this is something you absolutely need to do, that's probably the best way to go and intercept network traffic and send it off to a proxy. Keep in mind also, Android devices are pretty mobile, so if you're trying to do this to make something work in a corporate environment, you have to consider what happens when the user's phone switches over to a different Wi-Fi network, or it switches over to 3G. What happens if it switches network? They're in the building, right? Maybe they just have a weak connection, and the phone decides that it likes the mobile network better than your Wi-Fi, right? Relying on proxies on mobile devices tends to not work so well.
Okay.
So just keep that in mind with whatever you wind up developing.
All right. Next question. This is from Hidden Android in Croatia. Should, and I think actually he means can, devices with backlit hardware keys turn the lights off using an API call? I have an HTC One X, and the lights are controlled only through a sensor. This makes astronomy apps where dark adaptation is needed impossible.
So there is an API call to go and hide the bottom row of buttons on your device. I believe is that called the system bar, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can go and we like to call it lights out mode, but you can either make those buttons dim down to small little dots. So say you're doing something full screen like a game, and you don't want to go and bother the user, or an ebook reader. Is actually probably an even better use case. And then there's also another mode that you can take it even further. That'll go and hide everything completely. So YouTube is a good example of where that's done. The catch being is when you completely hide the system bar, any user interaction with the screen will bring it back, because the user does need to have a way to get back to that home button. It's very important. Now, I'm not sure what the implementation is on the HTC One X, and I believe that's actually something that's left up to HTC how they want to implement. But if there is a way to turn off those lights, that would be the way to do it. So in any case, you shouldn't be designing just for that one particular phone. So if having these extra controls on screen is an issue, you might want to go and dim the system bar regardless.
I actually interpreted the question as there being a hardware keyboard.
Oh,
yeah.
so not the home button.
Right, but backlit like a G1 or something with backlit keys.
Okay, I don't think there's a separate API call for that. If there is a way, it would probably be the same one as the system bar. But
right.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that actually controls keyboard lighting.
Right.
Okay. Next question. This is from Anuj, who is in Mumbai, in India, obviously. How many more years will it take to sell apps on Google Play from India? Can you give some answer other than we are working on it? It's been years we are getting the same reply. Does Google want Indian developers to develop free apps only forever?
Okay, so in general, we want to go and offer the ability to go and buy and sell paid apps globally. Of course, it's important to developers and it's important for users to have a wide range of applications available to them. That said, the world's a very large, very complicated place, and then whenever you have money involved, things get even more complicated. So we're trying to go and offer these services to everyone as quickly as we can. Some places are taking us longer than others. Unfortunately, I can't speak to the roadmap as to when anything will happen. It's the same as anything else having to do with the Android roadmap. We can't talk about it on the air here. So all I can say is be patient. We're trying to get to everywhere as quickly as we can, and hopefully we'll get to India soon. But again, I don't know I actually honestly don't know the answer, but if I did, I couldn't actually tell you any specifics.
Okay, thanks. And I think the answer pretty much is Google does not want Indian developers to develop free apps only forever. So we are, surely working on it for every country.
Right.
Next question is from Akil in Ashburn, Virginia. Is there a support library for the calendar contract content provider? I see that it is supported from SDK 14 and upwards.
No. So that's not something I believe we can actually offer via the support library, because it would require elevated permissions. It needs to be able to read from the calendar database on the phone. So the only service that can provide that is the calendar application itself. So short of having a new version of calendar that you downloaded from Google Play, which doesn't really make much sense in that case, since it's one of the system apps, which we always update via OTA. There's really not any way to go and load that new code on there. So short answer, the only way that can be done is via OTA.
All right, thank you. Another question about Market or Google Play Services, Google Play Store. From Danny in the Netherlands, how long should it take before an app is back on the market after the complaining party of a trademark infringement has mailed Google the app can go back? It's been waiting for 16 days and counting.
16 days is definitely...
Before you guys go on, Joe, can you adjust your mic to make sure it's not rubbing against your collar too much? I'm getting a little feedback from you.
Okay.
16 days is definitely on the long side. That said, I'm not sure what the specifics are in your particular case. What I'd recommend in this case is send us an email via Google Plus or directly to our account. Just feel free to send it to me or Android developers. I'm Trevor Johns. Android developers is Android developers, of course. Make sure you let us know the name of your application and then the ticket number you have when you contacted support, and we can find out why this has taken so long. Again, 16 days, that's much longer than I'd expect it to take, but I'm not sure why. It's possible that there was some missing information, or it possibly got routed to the wrong address. In fact, we're not even sure if it was submitted via email or via postal mail, so there's a lot of information that we're not sure just based on your question. Send us more details. We'll get to the bottom of it for you.
Okay, thanks. A question from Shane in Wisconsin. Is there anywhere to get more information regarding an update to the Android SDK for Google Maps, or just someone to contact about the possibility of it?
So we're aware that developers want this. I don't think you need to contact us to tell us. We know developers want more features in the Maps SDK. That said, just like the previous question on India, we can't talk about the roadmap on air, so we can't actually tell you what, if anything, is happening with this. But again, we are very much aware that developers want an updated Maps SDK.
I would also add places to watch for updates. Android Developers Plus page and the Android Developer blog.
Yes.
Are the first two places that we will post if and when updates to the Maps SDK go live.
And Rado's show, too.
And Rado's show.
Yeah, so I believe it's every Monday. Rado Meyer does a quick, is it 5 minutes, I think? a quick, few-minute update on what's new in the Android world. So if you prefer video content, you are watching a video show right now, of course. That's certainly a good place to go. So yeah, 3 locations: Google+, Google Developer Blog, and This Week in Android on YouTube. So that'd be on the Android Developers channel.
Okay, well, that covers all of the questions that we had for this week in Moderator. And I'm assuming, since Daniel hasn't been urgently waving his hands there in the corner, that we don't have anybody in the Hangout asking questions.
Yeah, I think if there's no more questions.
All right, we will bore you no longer.
All right.
Please send your questions in and contact us. And having said all of that, thank you, Chirag. Thank you, Tim, who's probably not online anymore. Thank you, Alex and Trevor and Daniel. And for me, and
actually, one more thing before we turn off.
He's always like that.
Yes,
Go ahead.
I know. I always have a last word to fit in there. I don't know if you guys watching saw the post we made yesterday or not, but we're trying something new with this show. We're trying to get people to go and send us video questions in advance. That way, one, if you're not in our time zone to join us live, you can actually go and record, an actual video segment that we can play on the air, so everyone can participate. But it also will give us a little bit more time to go and formulate answers to some of the tougher questions you guys send in for us. So we still have the moderator queue available. We still are taking live questions, but we're really encouraging people to try sending us video questions. Please make sure you do it at least 24 hours before the show, so that way we have a chance to go and get you nice, well-prepared answers. The format for sending us video questions: just go to Google+, click on the share button, and there's an attached video link down there in the corner, and there's an option just record video from your webcam. So record a video, ask your question, address it to the Android Developers account, and we'll go ahead and look through those and play them on the air just like any other question. So give it a try. It is a new thing. We're not sure how well it'll work, so we're definitely interested in your feedback, but hopefully it works out well and you guys like it. So with that said, I think now we can sign off.
Okay, we can sign off.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
See you
next
soon.
week.